What is happening, all of you sexy warriors out there? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Geissele MRGG-S, and this isn't any typical run-of-the-mill review. I was actually able to put this thing through the Whipper course out in southern Idaho, hosted by Zach from Mountains Mall America. In this video, we're going to be talking about accuracy, reliability, its long-range performance, pushing it well beyond 1,100 meters, as well as how it performed overall, the recoil impulse, how it feels to shoot in adverse positions, and finally, we got to shoot it out of a helicopter, which was pretty epic. Roll the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoyed the intro because this was by far the most epic shooting experience I've ever had in my life. And as you guys know, I love long-range shooting. So the Whipper course was a long-range shooter's dream. I cannot thank Zach enough for having me out. And so with that, let's go ahead and get into our full disclosures. What is my relationship to Geissele? How did I get this MRGG-S? Well, as you guys know, I have a good relationship with Geissele. I'm a fan of their products because they make really good products. But the rifle I'm reviewing in today's video is actually Zach's from Mountains Mall America. He purchased it and he allowed me to use it during the Whipper course that he hosted in Preston, Idaho at the Day Mountain Ranch. As you guys can see from the footage, it was a pretty incredible experience. So now that that is out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the course broadly speaking. We're gonna have a full video on the Whipper course. I'm gonna do a full review of that class itself because it deserves it 100%. But I want to kind of give you guys a brief overview of what day 1, 2, and 3 entailed so you can kind of see how this review is going to go and how it's going to progress. So the first half of day 1 was zeroing, checking dope, and making sure everything was squared away on everyone's rifles. And then the second half of the day was more positional work, getting established on barricades and shooting in adverse shooting positions. And then we worked in the flat range there all the way out to 1,160 meters, as you guys will see once we get into the long range portion of the video. We also got the chance on night 1 to shoot some night vision, some long range night vision, which was pretty epic. Day 2 started off in the classroom, and then we moved to the mountainside to do some high angle and low angle shooting. We were able to shoot above 25 degrees up angle and around 10 to 15 degree down angles there at the Day Mountain Range. So that was really cool. And then the end of day 2 was actually the helicopter ride, which we're going to talk about very shortly. Day 3 also started off in the classroom talking about speed drop, absolute zero, and how to mill targets using your reticle. Everyone was able to take the math that they had actually done in class and then apply it to the range and see how it actually panned out in real life with their rifle, their ammunition, so on and so forth. So that is a very generalized summary of how the course went. But now we're going to get into this review, starting with the accuracy on day 1. When I arrived, Zach had the gun already set up and I just confirmed my zero. I shot 2 5-round groups. The first one was about a 1.2 MOA group. That was because I was rushing it. I showed up a little bit late to the class. I missed the first half of the day. But then the second group I shot, I took my time and I got a 0.8-inch MOA group, which is pretty phenomenal at 100 yards for a chrome line cold hammer forged barrel. And make no mistake, ammo has a huge part, obviously plays a huge role in accuracy and reliability and so on. So a huge shout out to Phantom for providing the ammo that I used during the course. It's the M1200, 140 grain hollow tip ammunition. I believe it's made to the same specs that the military is using for the MRGG-S program. Accuracy-wise, it's what I've come to expect and love from Geissele cold hammer forged chrome line barrels, sub MOA groups, which again is phenomenal for a chrome line barrel. For those of you nerds who are wondering, it was pushing around 2750 as an average FPS, 2760-ish in our 10-round group that we chronoed it for. But that was enough information, and Zach had enough historical information to plug it into the ballistic calculator and give us our dopes for our MazTech for reaching out the range. Now, as far as reliability goes, we had 100% reliability with that Phantom ammunition through 500 rounds in this experience. I hate to even call it a class. It's more like an experience. It was that epic. But we had 0 reliability issues, which again, I've come to expect, and the gun was very dirty. In fact, at one point, I took the bolt carrier group out just to wipe it off and lube it up with some oil. And Zach and the whole cadre started clowning me, calling me a YouTuber, and that's how you know he's a YouTuber. He's cleaning his guns. But every once in a while, I just cleaned it before the helicopter. I didn't want to have any hiccups in the helicopter because it got very dirty, shooting it suppressed with that Griffin Armament PRC 300 can. It's a traditional baffle stack can, with a break on the front. Again, big shout out to Griffin for sending that can out. They did send me that can to use in this review, so shout out to them. It performed phenomenally well. The gun was still extremely soft recoiling, which we'll talk about here in a moment when we get to the phased array gas block system from Geissele. But even with that traditional baffle stack can from Griffin, it sounded phenomenal and it still felt really good. I wasn't getting gassed out or anything like that. So reliability, 100%, as I've come to know and love from Geissele. Now let's move on to the topic which is going to consume the majority of this review, which is the shootability, if you want to call it that, the recoil impulse, and how easy this gun is to get accurate shots on target and get repeatable shots, spot your trace, spot your misses, spot your impacts. This gun shoots like an absolute dream. So let's talk about that. Now, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, I would credit that to the phased array gas block system from Geissele Automatics. And what that is a series of gas ports in the barrel itself that allow the gun to start to unlock in a slower manner, and it delays the unlocking of the bolt from the barrel, making it feel like a much slower, almost like a sluggish feeling recoil impulse, almost like a long and gentle push straight back, and the gun returns exactly back on the target. And you could see that very clearly through the scope mate that was mounted up on that Leupold Mark V, how easy it is for that gun to just drop right back down in position. But the only time I shot in the prone was when I was grouping and confirming my zero. That was the only time in this entire class I shot from the prone. So every single other piece of footage that you're seeing is either from a tripod or from a bag on top of some sort of barricade, whether it be a railing, a spool piece. Again, you could see the footage yourself. There was a ton of different obstacles that we were able to shoot off of, and including a helicopter, a strap in a helicopter, which is pretty freaking epic. So the recoil impulse is best described by the video you're watching right now, showing you what's actually happening to the reticle as I'm shooting. However, I'll just try to describe it as best as possible. When you have those sharp recoil impulses, like with something like the HK or the SR25, for instance, that sharp recoil impulse can push you just enough to get you off target. Even though it's a quicker recoil impulse, you might lose the target. You might come further off the target and further off your sight picture and have to be searching around for it in order to find and spot your trace or your miss. But with the Geissele MRGG-S, it's very easy to keep that target in your sight picture and to quickly stabilize the rifle in order to spot your trace or spot your impact or your miss, and then correct based off the information you're receiving. So while the accuracy and reliability are kind of the barrier to entry, like the minimum requirement for it being considered a serious rifle, in my opinion, this gun goes beyond that with this patented phased array gas block system and allows you to actually simply trace very easily, even from these obscure positions when you're not supported or you're sitting on a mountainside or you're shooting off a tank strap or whatever it might be, and get back and remain on target to spot your misses, which is incredibly important when you're doing combat accuracy on realistic size targets, right? Anyone can get their Kestrel out and get their rangefinder out and take all the time in the world to get that first round impact. But a lot of times in this DMR role, in this sniper role, in actual combat scenarios on a two-way range, you're not going to be having the time to do all that. You're going to be taking a shot, seeing where your miss hits in the reticle, and then moving your reticle to that position to adjust for it. It's part of the reason I love the Horus Tremor 3 reticle, and I think a big part of the reason the military uses it as well is because it is 4 fast follow-up shots to get, you get that first round miss. That's your data right there. You go ahead and get you on target. So all your other data is to kind of get you in the ballpark, to get you within a couple feet of the target. And then after that, if you have a gun like the MRGG-S, you can spot your misses even when you're in those uncomfortable, unbalanced, or strenuous positions. Then you can move your reticle to where that miss was and get that second round impact, as you guys have seen in a lot of the footage. Whether I was shooting off of a tank trap, whether I was shooting off of a barricade, or it was off of a tripod, as you can see, it varies slightly differently based off of where I'm positioned and how I'm positioned, but most of the time that reticle comes straight up, straight back down. A lot of the time it doesn't even come off the target. A few of those times I was on the mountainside, I didn't have a really good brace position behind my shoulder or behind my back. I was mostly using my core to stabilize the gun. And in those cases, you can kind of see it lift up a little bit more, but it comes right back down. And it's a slow, again, it feels sluggish, but it's not. It's the way it's designed. And it's designed that way intentionally so that once that reticle comes back down, comes back quickly, it just feels sluggish compared to the more sharp recoil impulses that you might be used to. I would actually compare the recoil impulse, the closest thing I can kind of compare it to would be a 7.62x39 AK, which is saying a lot because the 6.5 Creedmoor has a considerable amount of more felt recoil than the 7.62x39, but that's the feeling you get when you shoot the MRGG-S. Now granted, it is a pretty long, beefy gun. It's a heavy setup the way that Zach has his set up. So that definitely does aid in a little bit of that recoil mitigation. But at the same time, there has to be something said for how light recoiling it is for the caliber. As many of you know, I also own the MRGG-A from LMT, which is a phenomenal rifle, the 14.5-inch 6.5 Creedmoor. But even though this gun, this MRGG-S, was shooting with a traditional baffle stack can, whereas I'm running the flow-through, Huxworks flow-through 7.62 on the LMT MRGG-A, the MRGG-S still has a softer recoil impulse. It's still easier to get back on target, although they're both phenomenally well-built rifles. So now that we've talked about the recoil impulse, let's go ahead and discuss the long-range performance. Now, as I mentioned, this isn't a true measure of how far I could push this gun, because that wasn't the purpose of this course. The purpose of this course was to get better as a shooter in these mountainous environments. So I didn't really lay down and just like take out all the other variables from the equation, like myself and my own shooting skill level and my positional work, and just shoot from the prone and see how far we could push it. However, I was extremely impressed when I was shooting from a kneeling position on a lower barricade with a rear tripod support and a front bag to be able to get really consistent impacts out to 1,160 meters and push the barrier, push to the absolute limit of how fast I could shoot while getting accurate impacts on target. Now that is 260 yards further than I've ever shot in the past. In the past, I've only shot 1,000 from the prone position or from a bench. So all I can say is that this gun is absolutely unbelievable. Made it like a dream to shoot. As you can see from the footage, you can see my real-time reaction to getting those impacts and how consistently and how quickly I was getting those impacts.
Gas gunning at 1,100 meters.
Dude, this gun is unbelievable. This is really
That was a sick run, dude.
unbelievable.
Good job.
1160.
Good job, dude. That was pretty sick.
Thanks, bro.
Plus, like watching your trace, just like bam, bam.
Needless to say, I was very impressed with the long-range performance of this rifle. So before we get into the setup, I want to give you guys kind of my summary, my conclusion of what I believe about the MRGG-S. What are my feelings? Would I buy one? And the answer is 100% yes. They are pretty expensive. I do believe the price tag justifies the quality of the product and what you're getting. It will be mine one day. Mark my words, I will have one here on the channel personally because it is that phenomenal of a shooting gun. And with that being said, there's a ton of little improvements that Geissele has made to their own already improved platforms, their AR-15 platforms, that give this thing an even higher value, like the reinforced upper receiver. The built-in ARCA on the rail was phenomenal for either bag work or tripod work, obviously. Their barrels are extremely accurate and are gonna have a very long life due to the construction. They come with the best triggers in the industry. Obviously, Geissele triggers, I believe, are the best in the industry for a combat style rifle. And the best part is they accept SR25 pattern magazines, so you can use your cheap 308 and 6.5 Creedmoor Magpul magazines, which are, as we know, very reliable and very cheap, which is great, so you can stock up on them. As well as it coming with their fully ambidextrous lowers, they have what I believe is the best system for a bolt hold open. You just press down the dust cover in order to lock the bolt to the rear, just like on the new GFR Mod 1s. And there's a bolt release on the right-hand side of the gun, as well as a magazine release on the left-hand side of the gun. The only thing that I would actually change about the MRGG-S is the stock that comes on it. I'm not a huge fan of a fixed stock like the Magpul PRS Lite, I believe it is, that comes on there, because in certain positions, I'd like to pull a little bit of that length of pull out and collapse it a little bit in order to get a better view through the optic and get more comfortable behind it, especially, again, shooting at those high angles or low angles, or off a barricade. In a lot of cases, unless I'm in the prone, I like to collapse that stock in just a little bit. Even though I'm a big guy, that's just how my body works. That's how my mechanics are, and I like to collapse the stock in a little bit. So I'd probably switch it to a B5, one of their PRS style stocks that have the ability to be adjusted. But outside of that, I really can't think of anything else that I would change on that rifle. I think it's pretty darn close to a perfect gun if you're interested in a 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor. And with that type of accuracy, that type of reliability, that type of ability to get fast follow-up shots and get back on target, I really don't see the advantage in a bolt gun unless you're going to a magnum caliber over the semi-auto MRGG-S. So in conclusion, should you buy one? If you got the dough, I don't think there is a better 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor on the market today. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the setup, starting from blast end to ass end. So up there at the front of the gun, we have the Griffin PRC 300 suppressor. This is a brand new suppressor from Griffin Armament, and they did send it out to the channel, so big shout out to Griffin. This can perform phenomenally well. It is hub compatible, so we had to put the Huxworks hub adapter on there because that is what ships with the MRGG-S. Now this suppressor does have a brake on the front of it, which did help with recoil. And although, again, as I mentioned, this is a traditional baffle stack can, the gun handled it very well due to that phase array gas block system. I wasn't getting gassed out. It sounded phenomenal. I would say it was hearing safe. I shot it a lot of the day without ear pro, but some of the guys around me had less than ideal cans on their guns, and so I had to wear my ear pro. But for the most part, if I had just been shooting alone, I probably wouldn't even need an ear pro because that can is so quiet. Now moving back from there to the rail itself, this is Geissele's MRGG-S rail. It has a built-in ARCA on the bottom, which again is phenomenal for bag work, gives you a nice flat surface for when you're shooting off a bag or off a barricade. And then obviously for a tripod, for strapping it into any kind of ARCA attachment, we had the MTT SkyPod. It was a double pull on there. That is one of the best bipods in the market. Yeah, you're gonna pay for it for sure, but that ARCA allows you to be able to loosen it, move it forward and back, depending on the situation you're in or adapting to the environment that you're in. It is very, very convenient. And the same thing for when you're using it on a tripod. You can slide it in and out. It's a phenomenal rail. It has that key system in the upper receiver with the handguard, much like the HK 416 and 417. So you don't have to worry about it rotating whatsoever. If you have a laser aiming module on the front or a clip-on thermal, you know it's gonna be rock solid. It's got M-LOK on all angles, including on the bottom in between the ARCA rails itself. And there's just not enough good things I could say about it. I wish they sent those rails out on the GFRs. I know they do on the 18-inch variant, but the 14.5 and the 16-inch come with their regular Mark 16 rail, which is still phenomenal. Now, underneath that rail is the Cold Hammer Forged Chrome Line 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor barrel with a 1 and 7.5-inch twist. We've already talked about the accuracy out of that thing, but I just want to mention it is a pretty thick profile barrel, and you could feel that, but it does aid in that recoil mitigation. It does aid in that accuracy when you're getting the gun really hot and shooting it quickly. Now, moving up from there to the optic setup, Zach has a Mark V HD 5-25 on there and a Badger Condition 1 mount with their diving board on top that is sporting the Maztec 1500, I believe it is. Before this course, I didn't have any experience with weapon-mounted laser rangefinders. However, after this course, I'm finding out very quickly how much of an advantage they are, and I'm gonna probably try to clone this setup once I do get my MRGG-S because it performed phenomenally well. The Leupold optic is sporting the Horus Tremor 3 reticle, which is one of my favorites for DMR type setups. And he also has the Rota mount on the back ring of the Badger Condition 1 mount that allowed him to mount an offset red dot at the 45 on that back ring, which I couldn't use the majority of the course because of the scope mate was blocking the view, so I can give you guys a POV of what I was seeing. However, it is a very cool location. When I took that scope mate off, I use that a lot to kind of get on target at range and then drop into the main optic. So needless to say, it is a very expensive optic setup, but as you guys know, I'm a big fan of buy ones, cry ones, and that optic setup, I got the chance to use it. He has a bubble level on the side, as well as a range card, a flip to side range card holder built into the side, which is really cool. I'll probably end up doing the exact same thing because it works so well. Now moving into the upper receiver group, Geissele has a phenomenal reputation for having high quality bolts. They worked with the Carpenter factory to make a Carpenter 158 Plus, which is a hammer forged bolt head, and that allows all the granular structure in the steel to be in line, which leads to longevity, makes it last much longer, a lot less breakages and things like that. I've never had anything happen with my Geissele bolts. I think they're pretty well accepted as one of the best bolt carrier groups on the market, and the MRGG-S is no different. They have a steel reinforcement built into the upper receiver group that runs along where the cam runs in the upper receiver, just again to increase the longevity of the platform itself. It comes with their Geissele charging handle, their super charging handle, which is a phenomenal charging handle. It's one of my favorites, has a good raised lip in the back, and is completely ambidextrous, so no complaints there. The lower, as we already mentioned, is completely ambidextrous as well. Safety selector, I do prefer a 45-degree throw. I'm a really big fan of the Radian safety selectors and that shorter 45-degree throw on the right-hand side of the gun. It's a great little place for a thumb rest. So if I had to change another thing about the gun, it'd probably be the safety selector, as well as I mentioned the stock already. And the grip angle is more of a DMR style grip angle, more of an A2 style with a steeper angle. I do prefer a more K2 level angle, or their Geissele A17, which comes on the GFRs. So again, that's a little bit of a nitpick, but it has the Geissele trigger. I don't even know which one it is. I think it might be specific to the MRGG-S, but it's phenomenal. 2-stage trigger. It has about a 2.5-pound first stage and a 2-pound second stage. So extremely consistent, extremely crisp trigger. And then moving back from there, we already talked about the stock. I believe it's the Magpul PRS Lite, and I'm just not a fan of it being fixed and not being able to collapse it slightly. So it was a little bit long, especially in the helicopter, and especially shooting off those up angles and down angles. I had to kind of really position myself awkwardly behind the gun in order to get the proper eye relief on the optic. So if I had to change something, that'd be the first thing I'd change is the stock. The sling I'm running is the HRT Tactical Combat Sling, Combat Padded Sling. It's one of my favorites, RDB5 over there at HRT Tactical. And as far as the tripod goes, I was rocking the 2Vets tripod. Again, that was Zach's I was borrowing, but I do have those myself. That's my favorite tripod to date. They're affordably priced and they're really high quality in my opinion. Zach's gotten a lot of use out of his. You can tell by the wear and tear on it, but it's still holding up very well. And that covers the setup of the rifle, guys. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. I had an absolute blast. A huge shout out to Mountains Mullets America. Go check out his channel if you haven't already, and make sure you stay up to date on the Whipper course. I definitely recommend you guys taking it if you're interested in long range shooting. I will have a full video coming out on the Whipper course, giving a lot more detail and what I learned and how the flow went and all that good stuff. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, Christ is King. Stay safe, stay dangerous. Range Day Bro out.